Well, Jake, thanks again for coming on the program tonight, sir. It's good talking to you.
Not a problem, Cam. I always enjoy coming on NRA News when, I don't enjoy it when some of these issues are coming up, but I like to inform the members.
Yeah, no kidding. And yesterday, a big issue, something we've seen really around the country, legislation that would limit the capacity of magazines to 10 rounds. We've seen bills introduced on Capitol Hill about this and a number of other states, but in Connecticut yesterday, a hearing on this issue, and I'm very pleased to report, sounded, Jake, like there were a ton of opponents of this legislation who turned out to testify.
The turnout was amazing. We've had battles in Connecticut in the past on microstamping, but I'll tell you, this was the largest turnout we've seen on a firearms issue in Connecticut. Just as an aside, the hearing started at 10 a.m. in the morning, and it did not end until a little after 10 o'clock at night. So it was a 12-hour hearing, and I would say about 90% of the testimony was dealing with the high-capacity magazine bill.
Wow. And the opponents of the legislation, did they outnumber the supporters, the gun control advocates?
Yeah, the opposition was in the hundreds, while the supporters of the legislation I could do on both hands. I'm going to say probably about 8, 7 maybe supporters of the legislation. As you can imagine, there were a couple mayors from the inner cities, a couple police chiefs as well. But that was, and then of course the sponsors, Connecticut Against Gun Violence, who really put the legislation in there, the kind of the state wing of the Brady campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the supporters of the legislation.
You know, one of the arguments we hear from the gun control crowd all the time. I'll quote here some of the mayors: Bill Finch of Bridgeport, John DeStefano of New Haven, and Pedro Segarra of Hartford. In a joint letter to the committee, quote, large-capacity ammunition magazines are designed to enable shooting mass numbers of people quickly and efficiently without reloading. Jake, as offensive as that is, I think the argument can be punctured fairly quickly by simply pointing out that law enforcement would actually continue to have these magazines in Connecticut, and why do law enforcement need to, quote, shoot mass numbers of people quickly and efficiently?
Yeah, it's very strange that they're allowing them to have them in their official capacity. But granted, the quote that they have there in their testimony is probably word for word off the Brady campaign website, or the Violence Policy Center, one or the other. But not only that, they're allowed to use them, law enforcement, in their official capacity. But when they go home and access their personal firearms, they are not allowed to have high-capacity magazines for their personal firearms at home. So the question becomes, where do they lose their judgment as law enforcement? They can use them on duty, but they're not going to be trusted or allowed to use them in their personal firearms in the defense of them, of their family, or neighbors or various other things. So it's quite difficult to figure out what they're trying to accomplish by that.
Yeah, no kidding. So after 12 hours of testimony, was a vote taken, Jake? I mean, where does the bill stand right now?
No, the vote was not taken. Here in Connecticut, that Judiciary Committee has until April 15th to make a decision on the bill. And the fear is that they may amend it to make it a little easier for people to take. They may make some changes to it and move it out of that committee. What I would recommend everyone is continue to put the pressure on those members of the Judiciary Committee and reach out to them and continue to express their opposition. I mean, with over a couple hundred people there testifying, they heard every imaginable reason, whether it's from self-defense. I presented the manufacturer side of things and the economic impact. I mean, is Connecticut going to reimburse these people for when they take their magazines? The study we did, it would cost the state about $58 million. $58 million on the very low end to compensate these gun owners for taking their magazines and their property, which were legal yesterday, but if they pass this bill, would become illegal.
Yeah.
So every NRA member needs to continue to reach out to their senators, their reps, keep the pressure on that Judiciary Committee. Hopefully they don't feel that just because they had the hearing that the pressure is going to die down, and maybe sneak this in at the last minute. We got a couple weeks to continue to keep the pressure on and fight with them, and hopefully they they see the light and understand that this is just knee-jerk reaction to an incident that was a tragedy and the result of a madman, not the actual instrument.
Well, Jake, again, I'm glad you could give us an update, sir, and look forward to talking to you in a few weeks here as we check in on that bill in Connecticut.
Thank you very much, Cam.
Thanks, Jake. Have a great night.
You too.
Jake McGuigan with the National Shooting Sports Foundation joining us here on Cam and Company.